Listen up! You can get the new iPhone 16e with Apple Intelligence for just $49.99 when you switch to Boost Mobile. We pulled so many all-nighters to give you this deal, and hey, stop messing with the mic!
I'm just helping us catch people's attention. This is a great deal!
Exactly, so it doesn't need all that.
Fine.
Get the new iPhone 16e, available at Apple Store locations and the Apple Store online.
Visit your nearest Boost Mobile store for full offer details. Apple Intelligence requires iOS 18.1 or later. Restrictions apply.
You'll get more than you expect with McValue at McDonald's. Like deals on your late-night go-tos when the party goes till dawn. And savings on their faves. So date night always passes the vibe check. Plus, when the fam shows up for the weekend, you can show out for breakfast.
Buy one breakfast sandwich, add one for $1. Only in the app. Limited time only at participating McDonald's. Valid once a day. Must opt into rewards. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Hello and welcome to mini episode number 468 of Real Life Ghost Stories. And I have 3 spooky stories for you today, and the last story comes from the 6th of May 2025. And story number 1 comes from Jolynn. The house was purchased in 1990, when I was 23 years old and single. It belonged to an older couple who had raised their family in this house, and both had died in it at separate times. The wife died on the kitchen floor in 1973, and the husband died on the couch on race day. The house was a block from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the same year that I purchased the house. The first thing I noticed is that when I would go to bed at night, I would smell this smell that was like a mixture of perfume and lipstick. I have to say that I do not wear makeup of any kind, and I very rarely wear perfume, and not the old lady perfume like I smelled. I only smelled it when I lay down for the night, but when I would get up and start sniffing around for a source, it would be gone. The smell persisted, even after getting new carpeting in the house and a new bed and bedding, but only just after I lay down to go to sleep. Eventually, I married and had children. One night, as I lay in bed dozing off, I opened my eyes to see 2 old women standing next to my bedside. They were having a conversation with each other, but I couldn't hear anything. They just both seemed to be conversing with one another. When they noticed me, they just faded away. Another time when my son was about 3, he told me about the ghost. He was a very good talker for his age, and he insisted there was a ghost that would be in his room. I asked him what the ghost looked like and was expecting the cartoonish person with a sheet response. But that's not what he said. He said, "She's a lady, and she sits in the chair," and pointed to the gaming chair that I kept in his room for reading stories at bedtime. I left it at that and never pressed the issue. But the most interesting occurrence was when I lost a set of keys. I tore the house apart looking for them, but to no avail. I'd given up finding them and resorted to using my spares. I came home one night a few days later and walked in, and there were my original keys on the counter in the kitchen. My husband was in the living room, and I said, "Oh wow, you found my keys, where were they?" And he just looked at me like I had broccoli coming out of my ears. He said, "I didn't find them, I assumed you found them. They were there when I got home." The counter had been cleaned off in my original search. There was no way we missed them. We had really good neighbours, so I checked with them, thinking maybe they had found them and put them inside for me. They did not. I never felt scared there. I feel that maybe it was just Kenny and Doris checking in on my kids and helping me out whenever they could. It was almost a comforting feeling. Oh, that does sound quite comforting and lovely. And maybe it was them. Maybe Kenny and Doris sort of enjoyed the new life that was in their home. And maybe they were just checking in. That mixture of perfume and lipstick, I can almost smell it. That's a real kind of specific smell. I love the smell of lipstick. I think it's just a real comforting smell. I don't even really wear lipstick myself anymore, but I do like the smell. And of course, if you move into somebody else's house, you're bound to be like, okay, the smell is just, trapped in the carpet, in the bed, in some of the bedding, whatever it is. But then when you get rid of all of that and that smell is still there just after you lay down to go sleep, it does sound like she was checking in on you. And I wonder if she had like a sister or a friend that passed away and that she was just checking in on you every so often, checking in on your son as well. Obviously doesn't help, you know, creepy ghost kids, creepy kids seeing ghosts. It's not great. And finding your keys. It does sound like Kenny and Doris were kind of checking in and just helping wherever they could, which is quite sweet, really. And story number 2 comes from Samara. To start, I have had a few paranormal experiences in my life, with the first that I can remember starting at about the age of 8. I grew up in a regional town of Western Australia, in an older house, which was raised on stilts. We had a front porch that only had one entrance and exit. I was laying on the couch playing games on my tablet, when all of a sudden I looked up and saw a lady in a dark green old-fashioned gown from around the 1820s era. She had a bonnet hat sort of thing, pale skin and darker hair, and she walked to the middle of the lounge room window, stopped, turned her head to me and stared at me, and then after what felt like 20 minutes, which was probably more like 20 seconds, she turned her head again and walked the dead-end way. I immediately got up and checked the front porch and no one was there. She has come around me in every house that I've lived in, and I never feel threatened or in any danger when she's around. And I've spoken to a few spiritual people and they say she's probably a guardian angel. Another instance was after I moved out of my childhood home and had my friend staying the night. Now, when I was 16, I loved to sleep with the blinds open at night to look at the stars. One night, I was getting shaken awake by my friend who was absolutely freaking out. She was telling me that she woke up to a lady in really old-fashioned clothes staring at her, who then walked away, and she moved to see where she was, and the lady had disappeared. I asked her to describe her and she nailed it to a T. I explained that she had been around since I was a kid and not to worry, but I think she was a bit hesitant to stay the night again after that. I have seen her more, and she really only pops up when really good or really bad things happen in my life, almost like a heads up. The next story needs a trigger warning for suicidal ideation. Another instance of a spooky encounter was when we moved from the town I grew up in to the town I currently live in, about an hour away. We were living in a rental house, and because I was a bit older, Mum was able to work away, so I was home alone a lot. And I just wanted to say that I absolutely hated the house that we lived in. It was just an all-round bad energy. While trying to sleep, I would hear laughter, and not joyful laughter. It was sinister and evil laughter. There would be instances of me going to bed with all of the doors closed in the house, to waking up to all but my bedroom door being open. I'm talking cupboards, bathroom doors, kitchen doors, the lot. I would hear footsteps running and they would come to my door but never open and enter. It was truly terrifying. I used to Discord call my school friends at night, often while home alone, and I would get the occasional, "What was that?" or "What are you laughing at?" And when I'd tell them it was my house, they would be like, "Sure," until they would stay the night. 9 times out of 10, my friends would say they hated staying in my house, and a lot would refuse to because of how terrifying it actually was. Finally, we moved out of that house after I turned 18, and it was the best feeling ever. 2 previous tenants had gone bankrupt after living in that house, and another had taken their own life. And to this day, I still find the thought of that place just creepy and not okay. Oh, it sounds like that lady in the old green dress has been looking out for you, you know? Especially if you've seen her in different houses and other people have seen her. That's wild. But also when your friend saw her, you must have been like, haha, I knew it. And if she kind of only pops up when something really bad or something really good is going to happen, maybe she is a guardian angel, you know? And also I think, you know, are your guardian angels people that you love that have passed away? Or is it just like an entity that is randomly given to you by something? There was a Portuguese series that I watched the first episode of and then forgot to go back to, and this has just reminded me of it. Oh, what was it called? And it was basically about guardian angels. Maybe it's called Nobody's Looking. I think it was Portuguese, and it was about guardian angels basically being given their humans and having to look out for their humans. And the first episode was so good. I just looked it up and it is a Brazilian TV show, but obviously they speak Portuguese in it. And in our Alistair Crowley-Main episode this week, we talked about him trying to summon his guardian angel to have a chat with them and ask them questions and whatever. And I would love to. I would love to know what my guardian angel thinks of me. I bet you they just spend a lot of their time rolling their eyes. But I mean, the latter part of your story doesn't sound great, especially when you go into a house and there's just all round bad energy. And I do think places sometimes just have bad vibes, but it's terrifying, the thought of going to sleep at night, all the doors closed, and you wake up, all the cupboards are open, bathroom doors, kitchen doors, the whole lot, footsteps running around, hearing the sounds of laughing. Like that's not good. The previous story, obviously there was haunted house vibes, but it was positive and it seemed comforting and like they were just checking in. This is like, I'm trying actively to scare you. And obviously in the house, bad things had happened. People going bankrupt, which must be an incredibly emotionally traumatic time, and people taking their own life. Maybe there's just a lot of sort of bad energy, negative emotions that have settled into the walls. But I'm glad for you that you have moved out and you don't need to be there anymore.
We all know that feeling. You finally managed to get away on vacation and the worrying starts. Will that bogus "beware of dogs" sign keep your home safe? What about that fake camera you set up? And will someone finally find your old hide and key rock? That's where ADT comes in. All that stuff, it's safe-ish. It seems fine when you don't really think about it, but you know it truly doesn't work. Instead, ADT provides security solutions that keep you actually safe, giving you real peace of mind. Because vacation is supposed to be, relaxing. Don't settle for safe-ish. Visit ADT.com today to learn more.
And our final story today comes from Amanda. This is something which happened to my parents in the early 1960s in Ireland in County Kerry. My mum and dad were in their late teens and on holiday from Liverpool with my dad's parents. They stayed in a lovely town called Kenmare, which they still speak really fondly of. On arrival, they asked for rooms at a nice family-run place called the Wander Inn. But since they were really busy, there was only one room left, and so my mum and dad were given accommodation in another building around the corner, while my nana and granddad stayed in the inn properly. They still talk of the amazing friendliness, food and hospitality there. They learned that my mum liked chips and even piled them on the enormous breakfasts with fresh baked soda bread. They'd never been fed like it. But I digress. The holiday was memorable for a less friendly reason, which I'll soon get into. My parents' rooms, 2 as they were not yet married, were the only ones on the top floor of the building and were opposite each other, so they kept the doors open when they were in them so they could still be together and talk. They were excited to have an almost room to themselves. After exploring the beautiful town, they decided one day to go exploring further afield into the countryside and came upon a quite overgrown cemetery. They noticed that cemeteries were often away from town in rural Ireland. I don't know if that's a tradition that was due to Irish superstition or if they're all that's left of long-gone settlements. Anyway, there was nothing especially spooky about this isolated, neglected place, except for the odd looming religious statue that they mostly just found it interesting, a peaceful place to adventure by themselves. On coming out of the cemetery, my mum spotted a group of absolutely beautiful bright red and white spotted toadstools. She was absolutely delighted at what she decided looked like perfect fairy houses straight from a story. They laughed about this and jokingly said hello to the fairies. She loved them so much that when they got up to leave, she could not resist the urge to pick a couple as souvenirs. She wrapped them carefully and tightly in a hanky, and on returning to her room, she put the handkerchief package on her bedside table. That night, after returning from the song and the laughter at the buzzing Wander Inn, they lay chatting across the small landing to each other until they fell asleep. At some point after this, my mum was suddenly awoken with a start by the sound of really slow, deliberate, heavy footsteps coming up the stairs to their floor. She urgently loud whispered to my dad, who seemed to be fast asleep, and then hid under her covers. As we all know, a layer of cotton and wool is the best armour. She was absolutely frozen rigid. The loud footsteps, which felt very menacing, continued until they arrived loudly up on their floor. Then they just stopped. They were never heard retreating. At some point, she must have dropped off to sleep out of exhaustion. When morning came, she told my dad all about it. half expecting him to brush off the whole thing in some way. He then terrifyingly told her that he had shared the whole experience. After getting ready for the day, my mum eyed her hanky toadstool package. Something she sensed about it made her reach for it. Noting it was still carefully folded as she had left it, she began opening it up. When she got to the middle, she found something she has never been able to explain. It was completely empty. Okay, you guys know that I love a story like this, but we'll get to that in a second. Amanda, your parents are entirely right about Kerry. It is absolutely one of my favourite places in the world, and I say that with no hyperbole. There is nothing like being in a pub in Kerry after eating the best food and lots of it, lots of good seafood, and then spending the night drinking and listening to traditional music being played. Oh, listen, it is the best place in the world. Also, Kerry is quite a magical place. Now listen, when I got to the bit where your mum spotted a group of bright red and white spotted toadstools, I thought to myself, you better leave those toadstools alone. And then, of course, she did not. But of course, I get it. You see big red and white spotted toadstools. It's like something from a fairy tale, something from a storybook. And you think, oh my goodness, those are so beautiful. I have to pick two. Don't do it. And those footsteps coming up the stairs, I say this all the time and I cannot stress it enough. In Irish fairy lore, fairies are not like little Tinkerbells, little winged things flitting through the air. No. They can be human-sized. They can also be smaller, that is true. But they can be large, human-sized beings. So that those slow, deliberate, heavy footsteps coming up those stairs, oh, let me tell you, that gave me the shivers. And the fact that your dad was lying there experiencing the whole thing as well. Because you could say, it's probably just sleep paralysis, you know. She was lying there, she was still asleep, she heard those footsteps. No, your dad heard it too. And you know what I will say? I will say that they are lucky that all that happened to them was whatever it was came and took those toadstools back. Also, as a complete aside, I think the image of your mum and dad across the landing from each other with their doors open so they could chat because they couldn't share a room because they weren't married is the most adorable thing. How sweet is that? Maybe the fairy entity was like, oh, look at these two cuties. We'll let it go this time. We'll just take the toadstools back. Don't do it again. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Thank you to Jolynn, Samara and Amanda for sending in your stories. Remember, the last story comes from the 6th of May, 2025. And if you would like to send in your story, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website, reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for some extra content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or $2 a month, you can get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.